Okay, welcome to the first chapter in System Analysis and Design. I'm actually going to go through and highlight sections of the book that I think are important. I expect you to kind of follow along. It would be kind of cool if you had the book there and ready when you watch these videos so you can follow. I'm not going to read the whole book to you. That would be kind of stupid. So I do expect you to read the whole thing. I'm just going to hit the highlights. Kind of before we start, there are some assumptions. Now, throughout this entire course, I'm going to make the assumption that your end job is going to be a systems analyst. I mean, I know that that's not really going to be the case. In fact, I can imagine that not any one of you are going to complete this course, get your degree, and become a system analyst as your chosen job. But for the purpose of the discussions, I'm going to assume that every single one of you are going to be systems analysts, and so I'm going to be giving you all sorts of cool advice on how to be the best systems analyst that you can be. Okay, before we start, the book is set up in sections, and the sections kind of follow along this system development life cycle, which we'll talk about, and they're color-coded. So for example, this first chapter is in the green section. So there's planning, analysis, design, implementation, and support, and the book is color-coded, which is pretty cool. So there's 3 chapters in the first section, which is green. Later on, of course, the little tabs will change colors. So it's kind of cool. All right, let's go ahead and crank up and take a look at the chapter objectives, starting on page 2 in the book. Now, I don't normally, read from the book, but when it comes to the chapter objectives, I actually kind of do want to make sure that you hear this, so that when we're done, you can see if we covered everything we said we're going to cover. So, you should be able to describe the impacts of information technology, define system analysis and define the role of the system analyst, define an information system and describe its components, explain how to use business profiles, explain internet business strategies, identify various types of information systems, distinguish among structured analysis, object-oriented analysis, and agile, explain the waterfall method and how it works, and discuss the role of information technology, that department, from a personnel point of view, and the system analysts who work there. Okay, starting on page 3, there's a thing called a preview case. And this preview case is going to follow you throughout the entire book. And so take a minute to read the preview case on on page 3. Because the next chapter is going to add more to it and more to it and more to it. It's actually pretty doggone cool. And it actually does talk about the kind of things that you might actually expect to find in the real world. Conversations between a developer and the rest of the gang are pretty doggone accurate. Okay, so let's continue on. On page 4, they give you some cool definitions on what is information technology. And it talks about, a combination of hardware and software products and services, and the companies that use to manage, access, communicate, and share information. So information technology. And then, of course, they talk about the kind of changes that are happening recently. 21st century, the internet has exploded, mobile devices have exploded, and all these companies have had to change the way they do business to account for it. And the interesting thing behind, this chosen profession, assuming, of course, that you're going to be a system analyst for a living, this system changes very, very rapidly. I like to talk about how the American Medical Association says that physicians should spend 1 day a week just keeping up, reading trade journals and trying to keep their skills up to date. So, if the American Medical Association thinks the doctor should spend 1 day out of 5 just keeping up, can you imagine what the requirement would be for a systems analyst? I mean, you're going to have to be constantly reading new stuff, going to seminars, going to education. If you expect to be able to just learn this stuff, and then you say, okay, I'm set, I'm done. This is one of those professions where, you get hit by a car and you're in a coma for 6 months, and you wake up, the world has completely changed in 6 months' time. So it's a tremendous amount of effort in order to keep up with all this technology. Okay, I'll quit babbling. Going on to page 5, they talk about some definitions of systems analysis and design, which is, of course, what we're doing. It's a step-by-step process for developing high-quality information systems. Well, that doesn't tell you anything yet. But then he says, what does a systems analyst do? Okay. Plan and develop and maintain information systems. That sounds cool. Manage IT projects. That's a good one. Conduct meetings and all the rest of those kind of writes memos, reports, and documentation. So if you're becoming a systems analyst, that's kind of what you'd expect to be your life. So the next, on page 6, going into page 7, they talk about the components of a system. I've got a little cool slide here. So these are the components of the system. It's the hardware, the software, the data, the processes, and the people. Which of those do you think is the most important when it comes to making a business more efficient? What do you think? Well, I'll tell you this. Here's a saying I used to say when I'd go in and do one of these projects. I would tell them, automating your existing system isn't going to save you any money at all. And in fact, it's going to cost you money. The only way you can save money is to change your business practices. So, if you have an old antiquated system that's done on paper, and all you do is just automate the paper system, you really haven't changed anything. And in fact, if anything, you may have made things slower. It could have been faster for them to write the little pencil paper than it is for them to type. So the change in business processes is how you save money. You save money by eliminating a step. Now, okay, I'll admit, you could not have eliminated the step unless it was automated. But think about it from this perspective. It's the last two pieces here. It's the processes and the people that save you money. Hardware never saves you money. Software rarely saves you money. Data's expensive as heck. It's the processes and people that save you money. By the way, does that sound like a test question to you? Okay, so moving on to page 7, they talk about the information system components in a little bit more detail about hardware, and they talk about Moore's Law and those kind of things for hardware. I don't care about that. The software part of this, the second tier in our little diagram, they talk about system software and application software. System software is typically that stuff that runs behind the scenes, like the operating system. And most people rarely ever know that those things exist, and they spend all their time in application software. I mean, offices that, let's say you go to a dental office, and when they come in the morning, they turn on their computers, and up pops this specialized dental software. They never actually see anything else. That's all they see is the dental software. Allow them to make, appointments and those kinds of things and do billing. And they're totally unaware that there could be Microsoft Office installed on the computer, and they would never even know. So anyway, so most people hit the application software, and that's where they stay. All right. On page 7 and 8, they talk about the rest of the pieces, the data. It's how it's stored. Tables, link tables, all working together. The processes, of course, this is where you're going to make a lot of money. They describe the tasks and business functions that the users actually use. This is the place where you can look at the existing processes and propose new ones that hopefully are going to either contain fewer steps or can go faster. That's where you make money. And then, of course, people, the two parts of the people, the stakeholders who actually have a vested interest in this process working, the users of the system, and then, of course, your customers, which sometimes your customers have a direct tie to the system that you're developing. It just kind of sort of depends on what kind of system you're developing. Okay, kind of continuing along about changes in the 21st century, that there's lots of trends rapidly increasing globalization. Let's say that you're a small company and you have a 1-800 tech support line, and you're open, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and you're not having any troubles at all. And then you decide that we're gonna offer our services in England, and you think, cool, no problem. Well, we're done. Well, no. What about time zone differences? What about when those guys are available? Are your tech support people going to be available? What about your 1-800 number? Is that going to work from Europe? I mean, there's lots and lots of things you have to think about. And let me tell you, when companies go global, they typically fall and stumble the first time. They don't have the right kind of people. They don't have the language skills. They don't have the infrastructure in place. They don't have the currency exchanges. They don't have everything. And they just got to blunder into it, and then they get smart and go back and fix it all up. Technology integration is kind of a big business, and then a rapid growth of cloud computing. These are the things that are driving companies nuts these days. And then, of course, everything is into an internet-centric point of view and driven by the power of the web. That's the whole point of all of this. So continuing on page 9, they talk about the types of businesses that are out there, the e-commerce models. And you guys have done this before. I mean, if you go to Amazon and you order, a book or a lamp, that's a business to consumer kind of thing, a B2C, business to consumer. eBay is an example of consumer to consumer, where I'm the owner of this gadget and I don't need it anymore, so I put it out on eBay and other people can bid on it. Then you have business to business, which you guys probably will never get involved with until, of course, you become a systems analyst. But that'd be big companies like, for example, when Dell Computers has an agreement with Intel to provide processors. That's a business to business kind of a scenario, and it's not quite the same as going to a website and filling out things. They actually share information, and so whenever Dell says, okay, we're going to build 50 of these things, it automatically updates a requirement at the vendor's site, and they automatically ship things. I mean, it's all super duper stuff. So, business to consumer, consumer to consumer, and business to business. And then, of course, an awful lot of these companies have been, somewhat internet-dependent firms, where their primary business is through the internet. They don't really necessarily have to have a brick-and-mortar store. They don't really have to have an awful lot of print advertising, and don't have to have a lot of employees. You can have your mom and pop operating these kind of things. Contrast that to real physical stores, where they got to pay rent, they got to pay utilities, they got to pay all these other things, which puts these new entrants in a unique position to actually compete. So, for example, let's say that my brother-in-law sent me a case of cameras, and I decided, well, I'm going to open a website and sell these cameras dirt cheap. Well, I'm competing against Walmart. Me, one guy, working out of his garage, is competing competitive, doing a successful competition against Walmart? Wow. That's practically unheard of any time prior to the internet explosion. So yes, it's an awful lot of opportunities and an awful lot of threats. If I was Walmart, I'd be scared of all this. Okay. So yes, the web has kind of leveled the playing field. You actually can't tell who's a big company, who's a small company, or perhaps you can, but most of the time you don't even care. So this is scary stuff. And it's also a good place to stop at the 15-minute mark. So I'll pick this up again in just a few seconds.